So we are talking about smart grid and giving more control at local level. Obviously, then it's going to involve things like microgrid and even nanogrid, where the consumer and independent system operators can operate at different levels to manage loads and load flows and rapid changes in demand and supply, right? So microgrid technology is a collection of generation resources, loads, and other distributed energy resources that present itself to the grid as a single controllable entity. So microgrid has its own energy production, its own set of users, and its own load variations, and the main grid can see it as just one unit coming in with these kind of energy supply and demand. Okay, so they are controllable entities in order to provide ancillary services to the grid in support of grid operations. So basically locally manage the neighborhood level or school campus level, hospital level, or a hotel level, let's say load management, energy production with its own local renewable source and load flow changes, etc. And separate from the grid in the event of a grid outage and operate in an islanded mode. So it has some kind of autonomy at some level, so that it is connected to the main grid, is obviously part of the main grid, but should something happen to the main grid, this is part of the cybersecurity and protection against cyber terrorism or even failure due to, let's say, a tree fell somewhere and half the country was in blackout in a few years ago in the US. Also happened in India, for example. So such events are not unheard of. So then microgrids can create a locally independent system, at least for a while, to the extent that they can manage their energy generation with their supply and the loads. Okay, so this is how it would look going back to our figure. We have the same players around, and you have the Tiger station, and you have now here added a microgrid which is managing, let's say, a few commercial members or few buildings on a campus or a few hospitals and so on, with its storage, with its fuel cell backup system, and with its vehicle fleet and its renewable energy source, and it's connected to the main transmission grid, but it's managing this little aggregation of the users. Right? So that's the only change here. Rest of it is kind of similar. So this provides additional flexibility in the operation, reliability, and independence when needed. Islanded configuration, as it's referred to here. In principle, an islanded microgrid can provide electricity to grocery stores, for example, fire stations, gasoline stations, hospitals in adjacent communities, and can assist the utility in restarting the grid. Okay, if the main grid had collapsed and you have an operating microgrid, then it can help restart the main grid. The potential of microgrids is driving the evolution of microgrid controllers to communicate with the loads, generation resources, and other distributed energy resources, for example energy storage systems, and thereby optimize the grid, provide ancillary services, support engagement in the electricity markets, manage seamless islanding and reconnection, and provide emergency services to communities adjacent to the microgrid. For example, when Hurricane Sandy hit and 90 homes went ablaze in a corner of New Jersey, microgrid in the nearby neighborhood could have assisted in many ancillary services and operations, rescue operations, disaster management, running fire stations, hospitals, and so on. So in addition to microgrid, controller must communicate In addition, the microgrid controller must communicate in the future with the utility, independent system operator, and other microgrids to provide or buy the services outlined here. Obviously, there is also a nanogrid which goes down to a single user level. So controllable grid within the microgrid and can disconnect from the microgrid when it goes down and provide ancillary services to the microgrid. This is somewhat like a diesel generator that people use for schools, for hospitals, for residences and so on, where when the main electricity supply dies, to run your UPS to refrigerator or maybe air conditioning, heating, cooking, etc. You have a diesel generator which can let you run for a while, right? So nanogrid is similar but on a longer term, where it manages, let's say, the hospital or the hotel almost continuously by connecting to the microgrid, which itself is connected to the utility grid. Distributed Tiger system here, but it can also go into an islanded mode if the microgrid collapses. So you have built this chain of links which completely increase the flexibility of the operations. Within that, you can do a hydrogen microgrid where you are doing your own renewable hydrogen resource generation. So you've taken the same thing, added within the microgrid a hydrogen. So this is now supplying. Look at the arrow size. Okay, so either you have a local biogas electrolysis, or you have a digester with the steam methane regeneration or whatever, or you have storage of local hydrogen to drive your fuel cells and your vehicle fleet and so on from the main supply line of hydrogen. Okay, so this is like a large scale hydrogen refueling station at the microgrid level for the system that you are operating locally on the microgrid. As the population of microgrids increases and the technology evolves, other possibilities emerge obviously. Microgrids could become part of the hydrogen economy, not only utilizing hydrogen for generation and fueling of fuel cell electric vehicles, but also generating hydrogen for use within the microgrid and potential export from the microgrid, as you can see here. And microgrids could operate at a frequency different from the main grid, connecting to the grid through a power electronics connection, thereby eliminating the need to synchronize with the grid. So they don't need to be doing AC-DC transformation, for example. Maybe it's a completely renewable energy generation system at the nanogrid or microgrid level, which is running all on DC, I'm just saying. So it's connecting to the main grid through power electronics so that there is no transformation happening except when needed in terms of failure at the local level requiring input from outside, or providing ancillary services to the main grid. Many possibilities exist, of course.